Hey, Michael, good morning. Welcome to ZenOne Podcast.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me, Tiger. I'm honored.
That's amazing. I really appreciate you jumping in because we recently met, and through the LinkedIn conversation, I really admired your passion for dentistry. And so I thought you and I should connect. And then after a quick conversation last week, I thought Mike should be on the podcast to talk about the dentistry and private practice ownership and all that kind of stuff.
I'm honored. I'm honored. Yeah, I'm a dental geek. It's my passion, and my goal is just to leave it better than I found it 25 years ago.
That's amazing. So what stage did you find dentistry 25 years ago?
I came out of pharmaceutical, worked for Eli Lilly out of business school, and then jumped to the agency side and became friends with the owner of the agency. We built our own interactive agency and then sold it to a conglomerate. And just real quick, my non-compete said that I could not work for another healthcare agency for 5 years or own one. The really funny thing, 25 years ago, people did not view dental as healthcare. And it was the one niche where I could work back in and just fell in love with it. I saw how dated some of the marketing, sales, support, and just how lonely independent practice dentists were, almost on an island. And I thought I'd do it for a couple of years. And here we are 25 years later and still as passionate about it as that first day.
That's amazing. And so back then, there was, I mean, obviously, there's no even a term of a DSO. That's something new in group dentistry. But on our conversation last week, you mentioned that even with the high growth that we've seen and everybody saying consolidation, you just can't wrap around like a 50%, more than 50% consolidation. So can you touch on that, please?
Yeah. I mean, dentistry as a whole is my passion, and the more patients that can get treated, the better is my general philosophy. And even 20 plus years ago, I was working with Rick Workman and Julie Thomas at Heartland, and the whole concept, the idea of DSO is coming up. But I was doing projections, and even at exponential growth, my well-founded gut is that DSO integration will never be more than 50%. The the sheer amount of practitioners, geography, landscape, willingness of the independent dentist, I don't see it ever going past 50%. And that's going to be a while before we get to 50% DSO. Even with the growth, right now there's a stall in acquisition. I think people are waiting to see what the first 6 months of the new presidency looks like. But no, I've probably interviewed or researched over 10,000 independent dentists in my career for focus groups or research. And there's just a willingness to remain that independence. And what usually doesn't get talked about is there are a lot of very successful independent dentists who are doing it right in their geography, and their ego just doesn't want to tell the world about it. They're very happy, they're very busy, and they either want to keep it that way or bequeath the practice to someone similar. There just is a patient need for that private relationship with an independently owned practice.
It's amazing. What do you think? What do you think the psychology of the what you said a successful independent dentist?
I think every dentist is given a burden. I'm adjunct faculty at UMDNJ, where we teach dental students some business applications. And still to this day, the dental education is so clinically oriented with very little business training. So a dentist comes out of schooling or residency with massive debt. If they join as an associate or buy a practice, there's no rule book. There's no mindset of here's how I'm going to do it properly. They're suddenly an independent business owner. They suddenly have staff and have to be a boss. A dentist, for the most part, and I don't mean to do a broad sweeping generalization, this is their sweet spot. This is where they want to work all day. And this are not formally trained. So I think the psychology of a successful dentist is someone who has tried and erred with certain things. They found what succeeds for them, and they repeat that. Innovation either comes in the form of new service provision or offerings, but the truly successful independent dentist, in my opinion, knows their customer base and they're good communicators. It's a pretty simple formula, but easy for me to say on the patient or consumer side. But no one teaches dentists how to handle the moment to moment stresses of owning a dental practice. And I think that's a big reason for the success of DSOs and the rapid growth. There are people who just want, take it off my hands. I love doing this and working here, but I don't want all the other stuff that comes with it. And, an independent dentist who's very successful is resourceful. They hire good people who believe in a brand or a mission. But I'd say there's a lot more good independent dentists than there are those ready to give up.
Interesting. So you mentioned something, good communicators, and we touched a little bit about dental schools. I don't think I want to go into like discussing what dental schools should do and should not do. Like it's a separate subject and can be a podcast on its own. But
it could, but whenever I talk to students, I encourage them to look at the New York Times bestseller list and consume as many business audiobooks when they're commuting or on their bike. Any type of informal self-education, it just adds to their.
it's pretty good. That's pretty good advice. But let's just say somebody graduated, found themselves in practice ownership as a startup. There's so many resources now, right? There's so many consultants. There's so many this and that, and go this seminar and do that, and by my mastermind. Like, how does one go about picking the right resource?
It's a really good question, because I've seen a monumental shift in the past 5 years with this, and I hope the people don't mind me saying names like this. But when I came into the industry, Gordon Christensen had his clinical unbiased paper that went out about
Clinician's
product.
report.
And he would put this out, and suddenly 60,000 dentists, like lemmings, would support what, he was a true key opinion leader, and a good friend. But the key opinion leader landscape of celebrity dentist or influential dentist has vastly changed. Dentists under 30, and I study this set pretty closely, I mean, they may read something by a key opinion leader or an influencer dentist, but they're listening to each other. They're listening. So PY1 is listening to their upperclassmen who graduated. And I think social media and communications, everything to these people is on the phone. That's it. There's no more laptops. There's no more, I want to travel to a 3-day conference. Learning happens peer to peer. So I think a big shift in them finding out what's hot or who I should listen to is truly through their immediate clinical friend group. Those that may have been upperclassmen and taught them during dental school, or a buddy who got out at the same time and has a great associateship who talks about the things their independently owned dentist is doing right. So it's a tough way to navigate. And, traditional dental media outlets are going bye-bye. Sorry, one just went yesterday, a very large platform, and less formal information is out there, and we're really seeing the word of mouth peer-to-peer influencing. So I know to get to that 30 and under dentist, find out who has the big social media groups, who has influence, who's speaking, and that's who they're listening to. And I will say the major shift also in that is women supporting women. The number of female graduating dentists who want a more flexible schedule are listening to successful independent women dentists and how they do it.
This is interesting. Maybe a small tangent, but I'm really curious. What's your take on, I believe it's Patterson's supported platform called Dr. Debiscus? What is it?
Yeah, I'm glad we can edit this part out because I should know it.
That's okay. But I'm curious, what's your take like when distributors using the old platform like that to tell the story? Like, I'm just very interested in see what you think.
What I think about all distributors in general is, and I work with all of them, and it's, a burgeoning business, is the independent dentist finds themselves so reliant upon their services. So if they're told to consume something, they usually do. They want the best price, they want the fastest service, they want the quickest repair, so they become beholden to the distributor. At least that's how it was, 20 years ago, and for 2 decades following. Once again, e-commerce, access, competitive products has changed the landscape of that. And whereas 10 years ago, I'd ask a graduating dentist who was joining as an associate, they'd say, "Oh, I'm just going to use the distributor that the owner uses." Now you say someone, I'm exploring everything, and not to give you a plug unnecessarily. I love what you do, but there's so many options now, and it's about speed, timeliness, efficiency, service. Yeah, prices is will always be a concern, but it's not the number one anymore. It's the value that the partner delivers to them. So as far as bigger dealers, distributors providing platforms or education, I think it falls in the mix, but I don't think it's the de facto go-to now anymore.
Yeah. I love your analogy with the peer-to-peer education versus like holding the KOLs at the podium. Yeah. It's like that's why you have the Facebook groups that are blowing up. And I mean, the time when they were blowing up kind of passed. I think now they're at the peak. So I don't know if we can keep saying that. I think like 2016, 17, 18, up until 2019, obviously during COVID, a lot of things blew up. But I think now they're like at the peak. But I'm really interested why is communication so hard for dentists?
I think it's personality type, and I think the shift is growing and yeah, I'm very pro woman as more women are exiting the field. I think it's just a more natural talent to be a good communicator. But let's really look at who a dentist is. Aside from the child of a dentist is incredibly smart, bordering on a little bit nerd, high science, voracious readers and consumers of information, and some have very strong solitary personalities. Those are not the ingredients for an actor or a spokesperson or a great salesperson, which all bundles into good communicator. But you'd be surprised. There's the one-offs, of really successful dentists whose brand matches their patient base and their geography. They may not say very much to the patient, but that patient trusts them implicitly and gets the healthcare message here of, hey, I'm 45 right now. I want to eat steak when I'm 70. Let's do what's necessary.
Interesting.
I think communication is communication skills is what's most lacking in post clinical education. How to communicate. I mean, let's look at divorce rates of dentists. Let's look at suicide rates of dentists.
That's
These
not,
are
yeah.
all things related to communicating a problem at hand. And it's a broad sweeping generalization. There who at podium blow me away with their speaking ability. Someone like a Dr. John Kamisi, who's at Georgia now. I could listen to him hour after hour just because of his communication and identifying with you as an audience member. So there's great ones out there, but I wish there was more education on communication skills.
And so while we're still on this 50% private ownership and private practice ownership kick, before we move on to the next subject, so from your standpoint, from what you've seen, is there anything that like a practice owner can focus on to be successful? Like what would be your one or two or three things that if you would be advising a young dentist to focus on?
Sure. I usually deal on the manufacturer side, but I help numerous independent dentists. First thing I would tell them to do is look into the Alliance of Independent Dentists. It's a group that started in Massachusetts that's now global. There's a great board of directors, but two of the founders, Dr. Christine Grazioso, who's out of the South Shore Pediatric Dentistry, and Dr. Jill Tansey, a GP dentist. They're doing this. This is not an association to raise money, charge exorbitant dues, but it's a very savvy group of mid-career dentists who have been successful, who are uniting their best practices to keep this success. It's one of the fastest growing, I guess you could call it an association, but it's the Alliance of Independent Dentists, and they have great education. I've spoken for them as a keynote speaker. A really, really involved group. It's kind of like the above generation of the hipsters who have tasted success and are doing something now to keep it and maintain it. And they're not anti-DSO. That's not they get it. That's not the competition. Wherever you can find dentistry, that's good for dentistry. But, they have their own feelings about private equity in healthcare and why independence is so important. So, yeah, it's a great group. I'm watching them closely, and that would be my number one recommendation for an independent dentist to check them out.
What would be the business advice?
Surround yourself with brilliant people. Number one, admit to yourself that you can't do it all.
It's hard.
If you're a dentist, you're probably not going to build your own dream house in your spare time. So, number one, find great partnerships. It's going to take a lot of legwork, but I would look for an accountant that is well versed, not my cousin's brother-in-law, who is well versed in dental accounting. I would look for administration that has training, maybe from the Academy of Dental Office Managers, who knows both dental and medical billing. That's where we're going to see independent dentists go next, into more healthcare billing. And third thing from a business, if you are an independent dentist owner, find a staff that understands your core philosophy and approach. Right now, there's a continual war between hygienists and dentists. And what people aren't understanding is it's not a personality war. It's a result of economics. Hygienists can ask for more money because 20% of the population never returned after COVID. So it's a supply demand thing. So one of the biggest things when I do research with dental consumers or patients is they want to see a united team. They want smiling, happy people because, let's be honest, everything with dentistry involves some modicum of pain and fear and anxiety. So if I go in and that team is humming, kind of like when you go into an Apple store, anyone with that Apple is prepared to help me with my problem. And if they can't, they're going to get me to someone who does. Same philosophy. But the dentist can't hire, an independent dentist can't hire a leader. They have to be willing. I'm sorry? Cannot. They have to be the leader whether they like it or not. They have to make the tough decisions. They have to be the HR manager. They have to think of the rest of the practice when buying an extravagant piece of equipment. Yes, it's their business. Yes, they're the owner. Yes, they can make decisions, but they have to forecast what effect those decisions will make.
Mike, do you mind if I push back a little bit?
Yeah, go.
I thought about it, and my pushback is, what if somebody's personality is not, like being the cheerleader? What if somebody's personality is not really taking the lead on a morning huddle? But what if they happen to find an office manager who actually likes it? And they delegate that cheerleadership and things like that to an office manager, and they elevate the office manager and get out of the way. Like, just truly delegate, not abdicate, but delegate. Right? And then just get out of the way, let the person deal with the stuff that you're not comfortable with. Are you okay with that model?
It works in certain cases, But still, that owner dentist, every employee wants access or exposure to what the real plan is. So they may not be charismatic and able to, have a party on Fridays or great morning huddles, but they should be transparent and say, hey, this is me. This is what you see is what you get, but I do want you to know I care about you. These are my weaknesses, and that's why I hired a strong office manager, which I'm fine with. That's great. What I'm saying is it's just more successful when that owner tries. I have a client who is basically like Spock, no emotions whatsoever.
It's hard.
Foreign trained dentist. You could say horrible things to him, you'll get no reaction. You could say great things to him, you'll get no reaction. I had to break it down with him that his company of 1,400 people is looking for something. Now, don't become something you're not, but be honest with what you are. And he did that at podium. He was scared, but the reaction was, thank you for letting us in. We now understand your goal and we're ready to help you support that. I'm just trying
Interesting.
to tell an independent dentist can't have it all and just do the work that she or he wants to do. You are a business owner. You have responsibility to your staff and your patients. Just try getting a little out of your comfort zone.
A little.
A little. I'm not asking you to be something you're not. But also remember that office manager, if they're that good, is going to be keeping their eyes open. And unless that office manager has equity in the practice and is an owner, who's to say they can't leave tomorrow?
Right. That's
So
actually
at
such a good
least
point.
have a great relationship with that person you hire to be everything you're not.
I see this actually a lot, that dental practice owners, let's just say doctors or spouses, they find a good team member and they try to hold on to them as a dear life, right? And it's like especially in my world, right? So they'll, like, even starting a new account, they'll have a dental assistant to do the sign up and add all the distributors and all that. And I'm like, just take 5 minutes, create your own account, be the admin, then invite the dental assistant, then choose what you want them to do. Have like the full access to it. And unfortunately, 50% would not do it. I just
It's
like, sometimes it's
it's
mind boggling to me.
it's a mindset change and you've got to stay on it. I mean, I wouldn't have work if that problem did not exist. And I can't say enough of imitating good practices. I mean, there are phenomenal. I mean, people will never hear about them sometimes, but there are independent dentists in small states making millions a year. And when I talk to them or
And
ask them,
profit.
they go like this to me: Mike, I don't want to be a big shot. I want to be a big shot in my little pond, and I'm happy. And I know I'm doing it right. I'm not here to get everybody to do it right. I just want to keep doing it right for me and mine. And
That's
let me tell
incredible.
you, there's a lot of them out there.
That's incredible.
It's just
And
finding them.
yeah, and I'm trying to tell those stories on this podcast, try to get these people. I'm even right now at one of my favorite offices in Texas, Acrewood Dentistry. They have 4 locations, I think. Nobody knows this doctor, but he's one of the happiest people I've ever met, you know?
And, that it takes a lot to get there. And once you're there, you still worry, is it going to be there tomorrow? But, this is where, and I'm sorry to take a knock at them, but this is where the ADA has failed its membership. They
I would
collect
agree.
these dues and, they're beholden to insurance companies or, let's get back to the profession here.
Yeah.
At
Yeah.
one point, 30 years ago, a dentist saved my life. I was smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. My gums were bleeding. They looked at me and said, you're not going to have teeth by the time you're 40. And I was like, what? I quit smoking because of my dentist and my hygienist.
But did you enjoy smoking?
I loved smoking, loved it. I just had to find a different addiction, which then became iced coffee.
Right, right.
Not as bad for my teeth, but my dental education at that point was so low. It was, I got to do it. I'll go for a cleaning every year, every other year. Didn't take it seriously. I think education has come a long way, but everybody's, Mike, how do I get more butts in my seats? How do I get more patients coming? You know, differential marketing is what's going to do it. And so I'm circling back to that statement of, you can put up your walls and say, I'm not that type of person, but also on the fact that type of person may not grow. You may want exponential growth. Got to be willing to get a little out of your comfort zone. Not a lot, just a little, and hire wisely.
Yeah. Mike, let's shift gears because you have a very unique perspective on the manufacturer side of things, distribution side of things. You're friends with a lot of people. Sometimes it feels that there's a tension between manufacturers, distributors, and the practice owners. And let me just tee it up. Maybe it's completely wrong angle, but when you talk to the distributors that are pointing out at manufacturers for their fat profit margins and saying there's only so much I can do. When you look at the manufacturers that are pointing at distributors and saying, look at their fat profit margins, there's only so much I can do. They don't want to do the race to the bottom, but yet DSOs get preferential prices. But yet everybody talks about private practice owners being their main focus. But the private practice owners essentially are paying for the discount that they're giving to the DSOs.
Without a doubt.
How do we reconcile all that? And is it correct or not? Is it a correct statement or not?
It's a very correct statement. And mind you, all are necessary players and none are going away. But as I told you, I come from pharma, med tech, med device. The dealers and distributors on that side of the equation, the McKessons, the Cardinal Health, their margins are 1 and 2%. Dealer distributor margins with 1,000 salespeople out there could be 20 to 40% on a product. So the trade-off is manufacturers can either invest millions into a large direct sales force and go direct, or pay the margins and the fees to people who have access to practices every day. It's a long-standing relationship. What no one was forecasting were consumables, gloves, gauze, prophy pastes, angles, things of, heck, I'll buy them on the web. I don't need a salesperson. And the two groups I talked about, the manufacturer and the dealer, are facing another problem right now. This younger generation, and by younger I mean like 45 and under, that's young to me, don't have the time to see reps. Those days are long gone. Of, hey, come on in, let me take a break. Yeah, I'll be 20 minutes late to the next patient.
Thanks for the cookies.
Bingo. Don't get me wrong, there's still effective lunch and learns that go on every day. But the role of the sales rep is becoming less and less, unless that sales rep has other skills. Like they can repair a vacuum in the utility closet, or they can comment on practice management software. So, when I came into this world, I'll never forget, Tiger, my first couple days, I went to the Greater New York meeting, and I walked into the show thinking it was going to be like a medical exhibit hall with great education. I walked in and it was like a Turkish bazaar. And I saw one of the dealer distributors had a sign that said, buy one, get 5 free. And I said, this is insane. Doesn't the dentist who's buying understand that it's not 5 free? So that is what really got my determination going to change that mindset of, it's a swap meet, it's a garage sale. I remember seeing the first CEREC unit for sale on eBay. Times have changed as buying patterns change. But it is pretty scary to think that at any point in time, an independent dentist can have in their practice upwards of 10,000 individual SKUs, 70 shades of porcelain, different types of flowable composites,
100 different burrs.
18 sizes of gloves. This never happens on the medical side because everything's underwritten by a hospital system, or a general practice physician doesn't need 7 different burrs to do a bronchitis test. So dentistry is still siloed and so unique and so different than any other healthcare professional. And sometimes I think the success of either manufacturer or dealer just comes to time on the dentist part. I don't have time to look for something new. I don't have time to change I don't have time to think about what dealer X will do if I cut my spending in half. Will I lose my premier status? There's all
My
games.
blue points.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. But I am seeing a big rise in buying groups, alternative e-commerce models. Geez, I wonder who I'm talking to. But that's what got me excited about working with you. It's new, but it's the dentist that sets aside a couple hours a week to increase their own business equity and their worth and their understanding that will take notice. Otherwise, it's punch in, punch out, punch in, punch out, put out this fire. Oh, this person's sick today. Now I have to do hygiene. Unless you've got a model established, I wish you a lot of luck.
Yeah. Just a little segue, maybe. What's your take on the Patterson going private?
I have my ideas. I don't want to necessarily, but I think it was definitely necessary. I'm not surprised by it. Patterson had somewhat of a fall from grace from its high days as the technology dealer distributor. I think the advances in technology kind of let them down. There were obviously internal struggles. They had a great leader for a while who left a couple years ago. I think Eric Shirley was doing some great things, but it became a monopoly and Shine bought them, or someone saw the potential value of the customer equity and took them over. I would not be surprised in the relatively near future, though, if we saw a new buyer within 1 to 3 years that
Oh,
has
wow.
vast medical experience in dealer distribution.
Oh,
I don't see a
interesting.
consolidation. I see an outside player getting involved.
Getting involved, yeah. Well, there are rumors, but not necessarily rumors. I mean, there was a case when Amazon was trying to get involved, right? And so they kind of put a pause on that. And I mean, first you would see them at every conference. You go to Greater New York, you go to Chicago, you go to Atlanta, you would see Amazon booth. But then at some point, I think they pulled out. So, how do you think a manufacturer can position themselves in the next 5 to 10 years in the model of online purchasing, dealer distribution model changes, and then more importantly, getting trust or keeping the trust of the practice owners? How does the manufacturer fit in this equation?
It's a catch-22 because I think everybody may not know this. Let's say a piece of technology, let's just say a digital scanner. Let's take that. A relatively good investment for a year purchase, but does so much and never having to take a traditional impression again. Frees up time, really good for the practice. If a private manufacturer sells that through a dealer distributor, that private manufacturer may never know the name or location of that customer. So there's no connection anymore. But that dentist looks on their scanner and sees a brand name and holds them responsible for anything that goes wrong. The dealer distributor who sold it is kind of like just the middleman. So I encourage my manufacturing clients, any way, shape, or form, to say, tell us who you are as a customer, whether it be a warranty card, an educational event, a social media group, a broadcasting of connect with us, because our contract says we can't connect with you. That's the first thing that should be done. Know who has your product. But right now the big issue, and there's great companies springing up, but there's not enough people to service and support equipment. And what a DSO knows far greater than an independent dentist, if an operatory is down for X amount of hours or days, they know to the penny how much revenue has been lost. The independent dentist who's got a vacuum or a compressor out in the utility room, not only are they lost revenue, they're also paying overhead and salary for people to be there. This is a monumental deficit. So technologies that can alert people to problems ahead of time. I think manufacturers who include smart technology into their design, you know, Eris company has an edge device. It's kind of like a Ring doorbell. It lets you know when something is wrong with any non-smart piece of equipment. The goal here is to stay practicing clinical dentistry, not be down and be beholden to a dealer who says we can get there in 2 days. Just not acceptable. And you can't FedEx a new vacuum overnight and ask someone to send it back.
Like a loaner.
The other thing I tell my independent dentists, have a backup. If your contract or your dealer is not going to support you quickly, have someone who can repair it quickly, locally and independent. Have a company like a Tech A Go Go or an Uptime or someone on standby, because no matter what you're going to pay to have it fixed, it'll be a lot less than the revenue and the overhead you're going to lose. So I see that as the burgeoning focus for the next couple of years. The person who solves the service and support problem will win.
Interesting. It reminds me a little bit of the days when before I started Zen, I had a company. We built dental practice. That's how I basically got into the dentistry.
Right, in construction and architecture.
Yeah. And so my key element was talking to dentists right before we would start construction, looking at the mechanical room and actually spending a lot of time on the mechanical room, meaning like we would bring a dedicated air conditioner to make sure that we cool down the system, the room, and keep it at 68 degrees. Because usually you walk into a mechanical room and it's like 75, right? Because you got the water heater, you got the compressors, you got everything in one room, and they would put a server in the same room, right? So like that was like a common thing. And so we would bring like AC unit that's from the outside, bring the cool air. And then the second thing that always like I couldn't understand. So I'm talking to equipment guys, and they will sell like Air Technique or mid-mark compressor and a vacuum. And I'm like, okay, so that is designed to fit what, 5, 7, 12 ops? They're like, yeah, that's a state of the art. Great. I'm like, can you throw me a little one and a valve that if this one goes down, I have a valve for the air compressor just to go through that one? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, how much would that cost? Like plumbing wise, it doesn't matter. Like we can build this. Like it's already there. It's just an extra line and a valve. Power, like it's there. It's just putting a piece of equipment. They're like, well, an additional $1,500. So I would go to the doctors and I'm like, I think we should do it. It's a no-brainer. Like put a small little compressor, small little vacuum. They're just sitting there on standby. You will service them as you go, but you have a default mechanism. But again, 50% would say no.
We're seeing a mind shift. People are getting on board. I should give dentists a lot more credit than I deserve.
Yes. Because I think back then there was no social media to talk about it. They'd be like, oh, it never goes down. And I think I had 1 or 2 offices at the day of the opening, compressor went down.
And that's the biggest nightmare. So those that plan ahead, there's technology. I mentioned it before, but there's technology now that, let's just say you forgot to turn off the compressor when you went home on a Friday. You can now remotely from your phone shut it down, save money there. You may get a message saying your compressor has a lot of shimmer here. It looks like an O-ring is broken. You know what? Don't worry. I'm going to contact Tiger at Zen, have a part ordered and shipped to you. It'll be there Monday morning when you arrive. We have the power to do this now. Why aren't you doing it? Because they're trained to, if something's broke, we got to wait till it gets fixed.
Yeah. This is interesting. Anything else on the manufacturer distributor practice owner relationship you want to touch on before we move on?
I highly suggest that manufacturers create tomorrow's customers today. The dental students, the recent graduates, you know who they're hearing from? Dental insurance companies. They are in clinic at school working with equipment, brand equipment, yet they're not being told why. It's just there. Those that, it doesn't seem like an immediate payoff, but if you want customers for the next 10 years, get to the students now and not pay them, but educate them, help them. They are coming out of school with ginormous debt, and they think their only solution is pay it off quickly by going to work for X, Y, and Z. Get creative. Create brand loyalists and advocates while they're in school. Devote a portion of your marketing money to university marketing, clinic marketing, younger dentist focus, because I doubt that a dentist in their mid to late 60s is going to invest heavily in product at this point in their career and life. They're
Depends
probably
on the
going to
product.
keep doing what
In their swing or the golf club,
that's
whatever
it.
that's called. That's a huge investment, Mike. Just like
Yeah.
you go.
And they want to play more golf, so just get smart on there. I'm not a golfer.
I can't stand golf. Not my sport.
I'll play if I have to, but it's not my passion. But manufacturers need to understand their consumer, their customer better, and meet them where they are. Not just put an ad or a billboard out or show up at a trade show. Meet your customer where they are. Feel their pain.
Let me ask you the last question on this, and then we can start wrapping this up. I'll pretend I'm a dumb person. When it comes to this kind of stuff, I'm actually pretty dumb. When do you think and Dent Supply and others will go direct? And why they're not direct?
Wow. The first and foremost, for companies this big, not to say that they don't have reps that co-travel or co-market, but what the dealers bring is an army of salespeople out there. And I will tell you this was from my days at Eli Lilly. The more reps you have out there, the more a doctor will prescribe for that pharmaceutical. So it's the same thing on the more reps you have who have relationships who are knocking on doors, the more of a certain product will be purchased. For a company like Dentsply or DM to go direct, they have the money to do it, to build a massive sales force. But just as I told you, the value of that live salesperson right now is questionable. And sales reps aren't inexpensive. That would eat into margins. So I think they're looking at the economics of both. And not to be mean, when you have a contracted sales force, you have someone to blame. If your product does not, you have someone to blame. And the two companies you mentioned, one has recently divested itself of large billion-dollar investments. There was a product that no one could sell. So I don't know if they ever will. I think everybody's going to be here for a long time, and everybody will maintain their market share for the most part. Little pieces will get eaten away here and there. But until they can have a sales force, a support source, a training service, and education that does it perfectly 24/7, 365, they'll always fall short. So I think if they're going to do it, they're going to do it right. And I mean, I try to hear everything on the street. I've heard no word that's going to be. How they become more effective is hiring reps who have no sales responsibility, but co-travel with dealer distributor reps to make sure the message is getting out there on brand.
It just sounds expensive.
It's
You sell
wicked
one
expensive.
product, you have two sales reps, a dealer rep and a manufacturer rep.
But in some cases, it works. In pharmaceuticals right now, it's not uncommon for 3 companies to represent one drug. But think about it. It's 3 times the message. It's 3 different personalities. Margins are, pharma's out of control.
Yeah, that's why the drug is so expensive.
But to them, more messaging equals more consumption.
Yeah. Well, Mike, let's start wrapping this up because this was a great conversation. I want to be respectful to your
Yeah,
time.
thanks. I can't believe time flew by like this.
Yeah. I would just say, what's your outlook like? And maybe we can finish on that. What's your outlook on dentistry in the next 5 years?
It's great. This is going to sound real stupid, but there are more teeth on the planet right now than ever before in the history of the world. And 50%, what I want everyone talking about, this is my go to talk track. The number one most prevalent disease in the world right now is not cancer, is not heart disease, it's cavities. 50% of the population has an active cavity going on in their head. Once that hits, you can put a stopgap in it, but over time, that tooth is going to die and you'll be a dentulous. That disease I'm talking about, cavities, can be prevented. Go back to basics, independent dentists. Go back to basics, DSOs. When you have a patient in the chair, educate them about the disease that's most prevalent out there. Don't talk about bad breath and gingivitis and terms that people don't understand. Once a caries, I even hate saying caries, once a cavity sets in, there's no turning back. And it's a preventable disease. So
Dizzy.
more teeth are going to be coming on the planet. Dentists are going to have a great business model because when a tooth goes bad, it hurts and people want to stop that pain.
Wow. That's a powerful message. Mike, one last thing is, who are the people on the rise that others should be paying attention to?
I'll say once again, I think people should take note of the Alliance of Independent Dentists for Independent Dentists. Anyone who is interested in dentistry, especially organized dentistry, should sign up for group dentistry now. I think it's the voice of the industry. Great content, great education. I think the best thing an independent dentist can do is get their office staff to become members of ADOM, the dental office managers. Unless you increase your education on ways to bill or hit insurance or communicate with patients, you're going to stay where you are. As far as thought leaders, I really subscribe to some of the social media groups that speak to not the KOLs or the ivory towers, but the everyday dentist. And I find a lot of benefit and get smart every day by being a part of Dental Nachos. Great community of your tried and true red, white, and blue dentists, and a lot of peer to peer sharing. So yeah, there's four spots that I would go to.
Awesome.
And check out podcasts. If you're going to drive 20 minutes to an hour to your job, you know what? Only play music one day a week. Get some passive education and listen to podcasts. I love being on them. It's been great for my own business. Thank you for giving me a platform. But I did Zen's podcast because I believe in Zen. You are a great solution to a lot of dental problems that don't even know they have problems.
Yeah.
I mean, I admire your work ethic is bulletproof. Your service and support is amazing. More people should experience you.
Thank you. On this note, Mike, let's wrap it up. Would love to do another one. So thank you so much for your wisdom.
No, thanks, Tiger. I appreciate it. Happy holidays to you and yours.
Happy holidays. Merry Christmas. Thank you, Mike.